Hello, my name is Lunith, and 3 months ago, while I was hooked up to machines in the ICU, my mother sent me a text that said, "Maybe dying will make you interesting. Not, get well soon. Not, we love you." Just that. I didn't respond. But I didn't forget either. They used my illness to raise money. They used my photos for sympathy. And when I came back to life, they erased me like I was never there. No seat at the family dinner. No name in the will. No room in the house I helped pay for. They wanted me gone, so I vanished. But what happens when the daughter they erased starts keeping receipts? And what happens when silence becomes evidence? The first thing I heard wasn't the beeping. It wasn't even the nurse's voice or the shuffle of rubber soles across the linoleum floor. It was a vibration, faint, tucked somewhere beneath the thin blanket over my waist. Then, the metallic clang of my phone sliding off the edge of the hospital tray. That was what really brought me back. That and the ache in my chest every time I tried to breathe. My body felt like it had been stitched together by someone in a hurry. Tubes in my arm, an oxygen cannula in my nose, monitors strapped to me like I was about to be launched into space. Everything smelled like bleach and plastic. The light filtering through the small window was gray and cold, snowflakes melting against the pane before they even got a chance to stick. And then, the screen lit up. It wasn't a, "How are you?" or "We're on our way." No. It was a text from my mother. "Maybe dying will make you interesting." I blinked, read it again. There was no typo, no autocorrect mistake, no follow-up JK, or even a damn emoji, just 7 words. Clean, precise, delivered at 6:41 a.m. I stared at it so long the monitor started to beep irregularly. A nurse hurried over. I don't even remember what she said, just the tone. Calm, practiced. Like she was trained to deal with patients in shock, but she had no idea the worst trauma in the room wasn't the infection in my lungs or the sepsis ravaging my bloodstream. It was that message, that woman, my mother, the kind of person who doesn't send flowers or call when her daughter is in intensive care. She sends punchlines. I laid there, lips dry and cracked, trying to make sense of the cold reality I'd woken up to, again. This wasn't new, just louder. And I should have seen it coming. The last time I'd spoken to her, 2 weeks ago, she told me I needed to toughen up when I mentioned I wasn't feeling well. Maybe if you didn't baby yourself all the time, you wouldn't get sick. I had nodded, mumbled something about needing to lie down, and hung up. Growing up, I was the afterthought. The youngest, the quietest, the most disposable, the family mascot, until I stopped performing. Until I started setting boundaries. That's when I went from her sunshine girl to the ungrateful one. You'd think almost dying would earn me a temporary pass. But no, I got a text that sounded like it was spit through a smirk. The nurse came back. She adjusted something on the IV and asked if I wanted her to contact anyone for me. "No one's coming," I rasped. "They're busy." She gave me a look. Not pity. Something closer to disappointment, as if I had chosen this, as if I hadn't begged, pleaded, paid bills, showed up for birthdays I wasn't even invited to, funded college classes I was never thanked for. That's when she walked in. The nurse I hadn't seen earlier. She had soft brown skin, curly hair pulled into a loose bun, and eyes that didn't flinch. "Lunith," she said. "You probably don't remember me, but we went to high school together." I blinked, took a second. "Rowan?" She smiled, and I saw it. That same quiet confidence she used to carry, even when kids called her trailer trash in the hallway, even when my mom refused to let me invite her to my birthday because she wasn't our kind of people. Now here she was, standing next to my bed, clipboard in hand, saving lives. She looked down at my chart, then back up at me. "You shouldn't have to almost die to be noticed." I didn't respond. My throat was raw, and even if it wasn't, I had nothing clever to say. She sat down beside me. "No one's here for you?" I shook my head. "Not surprising," she muttered. "Some families only show up when there's a camera, or an inheritance." That made me want to laugh. I didn't, but I wanted to. We talked for a few minutes. Light stuff. She changed my IV bag, checked my vitals. Before she left, she gave my hand a soft squeeze. "You've got 72 hours max," she said. "After that, they'll send you home." "Home," I repeated. "Wherever that is," she added, not unkindly. When she left, I stared at the phone again. The message still sat there, glowing like a cursed artifact. "Maybe dying will make you interesting." I couldn't cry. I was too tired, too dried out, but something inside me cracked open. Not like a vase shattering, but more like a fault line. Silent, dangerous. I deleted the message. Then, I opened the Notes app and typed it out. "Maybe dying will make you interesting." I stared at it, rewrote it on paper, ripped that paper, wrote it again. It became a mantra, a siren song, a war cry. You want me interesting? You want me loud? Fine. I laid back, watched snow spiral outside the window, and let a different kind of clarity settle in. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to prove anything. Not trying to win anyone over, not trying to earn the spot they never meant to give me. This time, I was planning. Rowan checked in again that night. She brought tea, though I wasn't supposed to drink much. She whispered it was herbal. "Don't snitch," she winked. I smiled, just a little. It felt foreign. We didn't talk much, just enough. Before she left, she said, "You've got a choice. You can go home, or you can go forward." I didn't have to think about it. "I've already decided." I turned off my phone. I closed the laptop lid, but I didn't move right away. There was something heavy in my chest. Not from the infection this time, but from clarity. The kind that doesn't burn or stab, but sits inside you like a weight you know will never truly lift. The kind of clarity that means there's no going back. By the time the nurse came in to check my vitals, I had already signed the discharge forms. No one came to pick me up. No balloons, no flowers, no mother crying in relief at the end of my hospital bed. Just a hospital-issued paper bag with a spare inhaler, 2 folded prescriptions, and my phone charger tangled around my wrist like a tourniquet I'd forgotten to take off. Outside, the sky was a pale smear of white. A few snowflakes clung to the corners of the glass doors. I walked slowly, each step reminding my body that it still belonged to me. The city bus stop wasn't far, but the wind cut through my coat like it hadn't gotten the memo I was already bruised. When I climbed into the bus, the driver gave me a quick glance but said nothing. I sank into a window seat, the plastic cold against my back. Across from me, a young mother held her daughter close, both bundled in matching knit scarves. The little girl was giggling about something, eyes wide and unafraid. I watched them for a moment too long, and when the mother noticed, she smiled politely and pulled the child closer. I turned away, pressed my forehead against the fogged window, whispered to myself, "I survived death, but I still have no one waiting." Back at my apartment, the mailbox was stuffed. Flyers, bills, and one envelope from an old clinic I hadn't visited in over a year. I tossed everything on the kitchen table and made a beeline for the kettle. I needed warmth, something steady. While the water boiled, I tore open the envelope with the clinic logo. Just a routine notice, I thought, but the letter inside wasn't routine. "Dear Ms. Whitman, this letter is to confirm that your coverage under the Family Health Policy, sponsored by Valora Whitman, was terminated effective January 12th of last year." I stared at the words, read them again. Terminated. Last year. It didn't make sense. Or maybe it did, and I just hadn't wanted to see it. My hands trembled as I pulled open my laptop again. I searched my email, scrolled through financial statements. Nothing. No warning. No call. No, "Just a heads up, sweetie, we took you off the plan." Instead, I found a transaction dated 3 months after my removal. My mother had added Dorian to the policy, my brother, the one who hadn't held a job longer than 6 months in the past decade. The same brother who accidentally overdrafted their joint account so often that I eventually paid their rent directly to the landlord. My breath hitched. I sat down hard, letting the paper fall to the floor. Flashback. Sophomore year of college. I picked up a second part-time job at a coffee shop to help cover the family's health premiums. Seraphine had dental surgery. Zinnia had that expensive allergy panel. Dorian? I don't even remember what it was. Something about back pain from gaming too long. Back then, I thought it meant something, that I was the glue holding us together, that maybe, just maybe, they'd finally see me. Now I realized what I had really been, convenient. I left the letter on the table and wandered into the living room. My phone buzzed again. I grabbed it, half expecting another medical bill or spam offer. But no, it was a Facebook notification. Seraphine had tagged Valora and Zinnia in a post. The photo was polished, clearly taken by a professional. The three of them stood in front of a fireplace, champagne flutes in hand, dressed in coordinated tones of beige and gold. Valora wore pearls. Seraphine had on the green dress I left at Mom's house the year I moved out. The caption? Our strong daughters, women who carry the family name with grace. I stared at it. Not one tag for me, not one mention. Someone had even commented, "Where's the youngest one?" No reply. I didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, I took a screenshot. Then I opened a folder I hadn't touched in a long time, one labeled Exhibits, Phase 1. Inside were old payment receipts, family group messages, forwarded thank you notes I'd sent and never gotten responses to. I dropped the photo in and renamed the file. Photo S3 Fam without me. Then I opened a spreadsheet and started typing. Rent, paid 2 months for Mom when Dad left tuition, covered $1,200 for Zinnia's photography course. Medical, $3,500 premiums over 4 years. Dorian's birthday trip, $600. Seraphine's engagement cake, $250. The list grew, and with each line, something strange happened. I didn't feel sad. I felt clean. If I'm not your daughter, I whispered to no one, maybe I was just your wallet. I didn't post a clapback. I didn't comment under the photo. That wasn't my style anymore. Instead, I pulled open my email account, went into my settings, and deleted the signature block that read Luneth Whitman. I was done carrying a name that erased me. That night, I lit one candle. Not for ceremony, just light. Then I opened a new journal. On the first page I wrote, "You don't have to be seen to be real, but I'll make them see anyway." The next page was blank. Waiting. I flipped my laptop back open. The cursor blinked on the search bar. I typed in 4 words. Pro bono family lawyer. I stared at Valora's text like it was some twisted RSVP card from a past life. Family dinner. Sunday. No excuses. The tone wasn't inviting. It was a summons, a veiled threat wrapped in something that looked like love, if you squinted hard enough. It was already Friday afternoon, and my apartment was still half a mess from everything I'd pulled out the night before. Files, receipts, half-written notes to myself on legal pads. I had opened that laptop looking for legal resources, but all it really did was open up something inside me I hadn't let out in years. I was still sitting at the kitchen table when my mind started wandering. The spreadsheet was open on my screen, and somehow I had found myself back in the folder labeled Exhibits, Phase 1. And there it was, Seraphine's graduate ceremony photos. 3 years ago, I'd helped her fill out her application for the accelerated master's program. When she got accepted, she called me sobbing. And when the tuition bills came in, she told me, "You know how Mom is about women needing their own money? If she helps, she'll hold it over me forever." I understood. I covered 18 months of tuition, $19,800 to be exact. I remember every damn cent because I put off fixing the brakes on my car for months to afford it. I flew out to her ceremony in Seattle, took photos, sat next to our mother in a pew where I felt like a borrowed coat. There, but not fitting. Then came the moment, the speech. Seraphine stood on that stage with her perfect curls and perfect posture and said, "I owe everything to the women who raised me, especially Mom, for teaching me the importance of resilience." That was it. No wink, no hidden code, just a clean erasure. I clapped. My hands stung. And when I looked at Valora beside me, she just nodded like the queen of a parade, waving at strangers. My throat tightened just remembering it. I minimized the folder and stood up. I needed air. I grabbed my coat and stepped outside. Portland's air was damp, laced with the scent of rain on pavement. The clouds hovered low, like they were deciding whether to pour or just sulk. The sidewalk cafe across the street was quiet. I ordered coffee to go and waited, checking my phone out of habit. Nothing new, just that damn text still sitting there, unread. "We expect you there." Like my presence was expected, not desired. Like I was a role, not a person. By the time I got back to my apartment, a second wave of memory had already started washing over me. Dorian's wedding, that circus. It had been 2 summers ago. I paid for the venue because Valora forgot to put down the deposit, and the caterer almost backed out until I wired the balance. DJ, too. I even helped Seraphine pick out Dorian's cake because he couldn't decide between red velvet and carrot. At the reception, Zinnia stood up, clinking her glass with a spoon, smiling at the crowd. "Let's raise a toast," she said, "to the people who made today possible. Mom, for keeping us grounded, and Seraphine for organizing everything down to the last flower." The crowd cheered. I drank champagne in silence. No one mentioned I paid for the damn thing. Later that night, Valora found me on the balcony. She handed me a glass of white wine like it was a reward and said, "Real generosity is quiet, sweetie. That's how you know it's genuine." I smiled, the kind of smile you wear when your molars ache from holding back. Back in the present, I sat down and opened a new document. I started typing out everything I had ever paid for in that family. But this time, I added columns: date, amount, who benefited, and who got credit. The pattern became obvious. I gave, they took, they erased. And now they wanted me at dinner? As if on cue, the buzzer rang downstairs. I glanced at the intercom. No one had said they were coming. I buzzed them in, half curious, half dreading. A package sat at my door when I opened it. Brown craft paper, no return address. Inside, a letter written in neat cursive, blue ink, faint lavender perfume, unmistakably Aunt Thora. She was Valora's younger sister, the only one who ever sent me a birthday card without it being a group signature. The letter read, "Luneth, I've watched for years. We all have. You weren't imagining it. Your mother resented you because you made her look bad, by surviving more than she ever did, by not crumbling the way she hoped you would. She saw your strength and mistook it for rebellion. And we let her, because we were afraid of being shut out like you were, of becoming the enemy. I don't expect you to forgive us, but I needed you to know you were never invisible, just inconvenient, and that's on us. Thora." I sat with that letter for a long time, not because it shocked me, but because it confirmed what I had never said out loud. I folded it, placed it in the same folder as the graduate speech photos and the wedding toast video. I renamed the folder, Exhibits, Family Pattern. After a while, I opened the spreadsheet again. This time, I color-coded the columns. Green for what I gave, red for what was taken, gray for what was ignored, black for what was stolen. "You can't gaslight math," I whispered. I clicked Save and leaned back in my chair. Then, I opened a new folder on my desktop, labeled it Phase 2, Contingency Legal. 1 document, 1 email. Subject line, Pro Bono Family Rights Lawyer Inquiry. I hovered for a second, then clicked Send. Before I could even close the browser, my phone buzzed. It was from Valora. "Family dinner Sunday. We expect you there. No excuses." Not an invitation, a command. I stared at it, then at my screen, then back again. They still thought they had the right to summon me. They still believed I would come running, but they'd forgotten one thing. The forgotten never forget. By the time Sunday rolled around, I had packed my overnight bag twice and unpacked it 3 times. I wasn't sure why I kept bothering. I wasn't staying at the house, and I had no illusions about being welcomed like a daughter returning home. But habit has a strange way of lingering, like muscle memory from a time when I still thought love could be earned. The flight to Bozeman landed just after 3 in the afternoon. Cold air slapped me in the face as I stepped onto the jet bridge, but it wasn't the weather that made me shiver. It was the memory of walking into that house one too many times, hoping this time might be different. This time they might see me. A rental car, and 20 silent minutes later, I pulled up to the family home. The siding was the same pale green I remembered, though faded and curling at the edges. The welcome mat still had that coffee stain from when Seraphine's ex spilled his cup and no one ever bothered to clean it properly. Even the same wreath from 2 Christmases ago still clung to the door, faded berries drooping like they knew they'd been forgotten. I stood at the edge of the walkway for a moment, debating whether to turn around and drive straight to a hotel. But I'd come this far, and they were the ones who invited me. Inside, the air smelled like lemon pledge and tension. The fireplace was lit, logs crackling like someone had ordered ambiance. The living room looked like a set from a catalog, carefully arranged, emotionally vacant. On the mantel hung a new family photo. Seraphine, Zinnia, and Dorian smiled back at me, posed in coordinated outfits. No me, not even a hint that there used to be a fourth. My stomach turned. "Lunith," Seraphine called from the dining room, her voice light, too rehearsed. "There you are." She approached with a glass of white wine, her heels tapping over the hardwood like punctuation. "Glad you could make it." I took the glass, not because I wanted it, but because rejecting it would spark a conversation I didn't have the energy for. Dorian mumbled something that resembled a greeting without making eye contact. Zinnia offered a side hug and a quick, "Love that coat," like I was a guest she didn't expect to stay long. Valora entered last. She looked me over the same way someone checks fruit at the grocery store. Polite, clinical, disinterested. "You look tired," she said. "Still in that little tech job?" I didn't answer right away. "It's a cybersecurity firm, not that little anymore." She smiled with her mouth only. "Well, at least it's something." Dinner was served like a performance. Roast chicken, sweet potatoes, salad no one touched. Conversation stayed polite, skimming the surface like a pond no one dared to disturb. And then Valora stood, clearing her throat like she was about to deliver a eulogy. "I have something for everyone," she said, lifting a stack of ivory envelopes from the credenza. "Just some paperwork for clarity, estate stuff, no big deal." She passed them around like party favors. One by one, the siblings opened theirs, expressions neutral. I waited until mine was in my hands before sliding my thumb under the flap. Nothing. No pages, no bullet points, no clauses or signatures, just air. I looked up. Valora met my gaze. "You left us," she said, voice even. We had to move on. The air in the room shifted, just slightly, like everyone exhaled at the same time, but tried to pretend they didn't. "I'm not even listed?" I asked. "You made your choices," she replied. "Actions have consequences." Seraphine sipped her wine. Zinnia adjusted her napkin. Dorian stared at the salt shaker like it held all the answers. "You erased me," I said, louder than I intended. Valora's voice dropped an octave as she stepped closer. "I gave birth to you. I own you." And that's when something inside me broke free. "Then you shouldn't have tried so hard to delete me," I snapped. "If you're so proud of creating me, why do you work so hard pretending I don't exist?" The room went silent. Even the fireplace crackled quieter, like it knew better than to interrupt. Seraphine's smile faltered. Zinnia blinked too fast. Dorian finally looked up. "This is why Mom had to do what she did," Seraphine muttered, just loud enough for everyone to hear. Zinnia nodded, like she was auditioning for a role she didn't even want. Valora didn't flinch. "Take what you want from your room before we lock it for good." I stood there, fists clenched, every part of me screaming to say more, to fight, to list every birthday I paid for, every hospital bill I covered, every silence I endured. But I didn't. I walked to the front door, then paused. "I already took what mattered," I said quietly. "Myself." I stepped outside into the cold. The wind was sharper now, biting at my cheeks, but I didn't feel it. In the driveway, I pulled out my phone and typed a message to Blair. "We move forward." They made it official. The minute I stepped back into my apartment in Portland, the silence hit different. It wasn't the kind that comforts you after a long trip. It was the kind that confirms what you already know. There's nothing waiting for you. I dropped my overnight bag by the front door and walked straight to the kitchen, shoes still on, jacket half zipped. I poured a glass of water, but didn't drink it. My phone was still in my hand. I sat at the kitchen counter and opened the Blair text again, the one I had typed on the driveway. We move forward. They made it official. I didn't expect a reply that night. Lawyers don't text back at midnight on a Sunday, but I needed to say it, document it. For myself, if no one else. Morning came too quickly. Light filtered through the blinds like an unwanted guest. I hadn't slept much. Instead, I'd stayed up piecing together fragments of everything that had just happened. My erasure from the will, Valora's smug expression, Seraphine's superiority like she was playing hostess on cable TV. By 8 a.m., I was seated at my desk, coffee in hand, the laptop glowing. I opened the folder I'd created last week. Phase 2, Counteraction. Spreadsheets, screenshots, legal resource bookmarks. There was no roadmap for reclaiming the pieces of your identity after your own family tries to wipe them out, but I figured this was close enough. I clicked on the template for financial abuse documentation and began pulling numbers from old statements. As I worked, I turned on the voice recorder on my phone and began speaking, mostly to keep myself grounded. If it comes to court, I said aloud, I'll need memory proof. Emotion's unreliable. Memory isn't. It felt strange at first, talking to a machine, but over the next 2 hours, I slipped into a rhythm. Voice memos, data logs, even time-stamped screenshots of old Venmo transfers. I labeled everything. I wasn't just fighting back, I was organizing. Around 11, I took a break to stretch and check my phone. There was a notification from Instagram. Someone had tagged me in a photo. That was unusual. I didn't keep that account active. Curious, I opened it. It was a post from a Napa-based wedding planner. The image was polished and pretentious. Seraphine and Malis, my ex, standing in front of a vineyard, hands intertwined, with engaged written in calligraphy overlaid across the sky. I blinked at the screen. There he was, smiling in that same suit I once helped him pick out for a job interview he never got. The caption beneath it made my stomach turn. Thanks to Mom for the perfect match. There it was. Not just betrayal, not just erasure, this was orchestration. Malis had once told me my mother gave him the creeps, said she stared at him like he was some replacement for a thing she never got to control. I should have known. I should have trusted that discomfort. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel rage. Not right away. I felt disgust, cold and deep. I closed the app and went back to my laptop. I created a new folder inside Phase 2. Labeled it Reputation Exploitation, Internal Family Collusion. Inside, I started dragging in files, photos, messages, timelines. The way Valora had gone from cold to manipulative when Malis started pulling away from me. The forced Thanksgiving invites, the time she'd pulled me aside and said, I always thought he was a better fit for Seraphine. You're too serious for him. At the time, I thought she was being bitter. Now, I saw it clearly. She was being strategic. I spent the afternoon setting up recording apps on my phone. Any call, outgoing or incoming, would now be automatically archived. I didn't have many conversations these days, but when I did, they were rarely innocent. I also backed up every financial record I could find. Wire transfers, PayPal receipts, monthly allowances I'd sent when Seraphine couldn't make rent, and Dorian's car got towed for the 3rd time in 1 year. Everything went into separate folders. Property theft, character defamation, pattern of financial exploitation, no drama, just receipts. By dusk, I sat on the couch and opened the group family chat. The same one that had sat dormant most of the year, except when Valora sent out birthday reminders or forwarded funny political memes no one laughed at. I typed, Hey, just a heads up, I'll be disconnecting from all financial ties next week. Plan accordingly. Then I hit send. No one responded. But within 2 hours, Zinnia posted a story on her Instagram. Some people forget who helped them become anything. Subtle, classy, petty. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. This was how they operated. Hide behind suggestion, never speak the truth directly. That way, they could always deny it when called out. I spent the rest of the evening recording a private video of myself. "Hi," I said to the camera, no makeup, sweatshirt on, hair pulled back. "This is for legal backup, time-stamped, no edits." I took a breath. I'm not crazy, I was erased. And now, I'm reconstructing the truth, not for vengeance, for accuracy, for protection. I paused, then looked into the lens again. If anything happens to me, my phone, my accounts, my apartment, check this folder first. I uploaded the file to a secure cloud drive. One shared contact, Blair. I was about to close my laptop for the night when a new email came in. No sender, no subject. I hovered over it for a moment. Something about it felt off. I clicked it open, black text on a white background. "You better stop, or we'll ruin you harder." I didn't sleep that night. The message sat in my inbox like a shadow. 5 words, no name, no context, no warmth, just a threat. "You better stop, or we'll ruin you harder." I didn't forward it to Blair right away. Not yet. I needed to sit with it first. Let it marinate in the pit of my stomach, turn over every word until it didn't feel like fire anymore. Just data, a file, another exhibit. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. I skipped coffee, skipped the news. I opened my laptop and did what I always do when something hurts. I went looking for the source. I ran the message through a metadata checker. The IP was masked. Whoever sent it knew just enough to cover their tracks, but not enough to shake me. I wasn't rattled. I was resolved. A few hours later, while organizing the growing folders of legal evidence, my phone pinged with a message from a friend I hadn't spoken to in over a year. "Hey, is everything okay? I saw your GoFundMe page. I didn't know things were still that bad." I blinked at the message, then again, then I opened the browser. It took one search, just one. GoFundMe. My name, my face. There it was, front and center, my photo in a hospital bed, pale and wired to machines. Caption: "Help Lunith recover from her devastating illness. Ongoing costs, therapy, support her brave journey." The profile was listed under the name Valora Whitman. The organizer? My mother. There were updates too, each more dramatic than the last. Still can't walk. Needing long-term care. Fighting for her life every day. I wasn't in a wheelchair. I wasn't incapacitated. I had been back at work part-time for over a month. But apparently, Valora had raised over $6,200 on the back of my image and my silence. The violation didn't hit like a scream. It was quieter than that, more surgical. I read every line of every update, fingers cold on the keyboard. Every dollar donated, every sympathetic comment from strangers who believed the story. I screenshotted everything, every update, every donation name, every time Valora called herself the devoted caregiver. I wasn't furious, not in the way they probably expected. I wasn't crying. I wasn't calling. I was calculating. I picked up the phone and called Blair. "We're moving forward with the fraud case," I said flatly. She didn't ask why. She didn't need to. "I'm drafting the cease and desist letter now," she said. "Do you want it served personally or by mail?" "Both," I replied. "And I want it sent to the board of directors at her charity too. They should know who they're working with." "That's fair," Blair said. "Send me everything. Screenshots, timestamps, donation logs." "I'm already on it." I spent the next 2 hours downloading the comments. One from an old neighbor. "Valora, you're a saint. What would Lunith do without you?" Another from one of Valora's bridge club friends. "She always spoke so highly of her mother. This breaks my heart. They were building her a pedestal with my blood, and they thought I wouldn't notice?" That evening, as I was prepping the document bundle for Blair, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Zinnia. "You're being dramatic," the message read. "It's just a fundraiser. She was worried about you." I didn't reply. 5 minutes later, Seraphine posted on Instagram. A black square. White text overlaid. "Some people live to destroy, not to forgive." I took a screenshot, added it to the folder labeled Public Narrative Manipulation. Dorian, as usual, remained silent. Then came the email. From Valora. Subject: Love no greeting, no formatting. Just this. It's not fraud, it's love. You'll thank me when the bills come. I stared at it for a full minute before forwarding it to Blair. No response needed. Later that night, I pulled on a hoodie and walked 4 blocks to the nearest mailbox. In my hands, 2 large envelopes, one addressed to Valora directly, the other to the board of her nonprofit. Both contained cease and desist notices. Both outlined the statutes violated. Both were notarized and time-stamped. I dropped them in the box and kept walking. The air was cool, and the streetlights cast long shadows on the sidewalk. There was a weight on my chest, but it wasn't fear. It was the kind of weight that comes with knowing you've stopped waiting for someone else to do the right thing. Back at home, I sat at my desk and opened a new document, a draft of my statement. Not for social media, not for them, for me, for the record, for when people start asking why I did what I did. Before I could even finish the opening paragraph, an email popped up. Subject line: We heard about your story. Would you like to tell it? No name, no sender I recognized, just a hyperlink to a podcast that focused on unheard women's stories. They had thousands of followers. Multiple episodes went viral. I didn't click the link, not yet, but I didn't delete it either. I didn't answer the podcast invitation right away. I read the subject line again and again, letting the words linger in my mind like a dare. We heard about your story. Would you like to tell it? There was no pitch, no marketing lingo or PR bait, just a simple question. By noon the next day, I'd read it enough times to know the answer was yes, but on my terms. That afternoon, I met with the podcast producer Ava in a modest studio tucked behind a bookstore in downtown Portland. She was younger than I expected, but with a calm presence that immediately put me at ease. There were no camera crews, no stylists, no makeup artists, just 2 mics, a glass table, and a quiet room. I don't want to name names, I told her, and I won't scream into the mic. She nodded. That's not what we're here for. I'll bring documents, I added. Receipts, photos, you can use my voice, not my face. Ava smiled. That's exactly what makes this story matter. The following day, we recorded. I didn't start with the ICU. I started with the math. Over $80,000, I said, in the last 10 years, paid directly to family members, on their behalf, or for their needs. I recited the figures like a report: tuition, medical, mortgage payments. I wasn't listed on, groceries I never ate, car repairs, wedding deposits, no drama, no shaking voice, just facts. I wasn't the forgotten daughter, I continued. I was the useful one, until I stopped being useful. Ava sat quietly across from me, letting me tell the story uninterrupted. Her eyes didn't widen at the worst parts. She didn't flinch when I recounted the time my mother stood on stage and used a picture of me, tubes in my arms, to raise money for a charity that never saw a cent of it. I showed her the fake GoFundMe, the messages from people who donated, thinking they were helping me. The captions Valora had written about my bravery, the word resilient, used like a marketing slogan. The interview lasted an hour. I ended with a line I'd written in my notes the night before. When people erase you, the best revenge is showing up documented. Ava nodded, then whispered, "That might be our episode title." As I walked out of the studio into the early spring drizzle, I felt lighter, not vindicated, just aligned, like all the scattered parts of me were slowly starting to form a shape again. But the peace didn't last long. 1 week later, I was cooking dinner when my phone buzzed with a new audio message. It was from my mother. I didn't press play right away. I stared at the waveform on the screen, thumb hovering, mind hesitant. Eventually, curiosity won. Her voice filled the room, slightly muffled. "She's gone too far," Valora said, clearly speaking to someone else. "Let's be honest. If she had died, it would have saved us all trouble. No lawsuits, no shame." She laughed. I paused the recording. My hands didn't shake. My jaw didn't clench. I just stood there, frozen in a silence so sharp it might have cut through bone. Then I hit play again. If she had died, I played it 3 times, not for pain, for clarity, for evidence. And then I saved it to the archive. Blair and I met the next day. I walked into her office with the voice file, a printed transcript, and a determination I hadn't felt since the hospital. We sat across from each other. She didn't smile. She just nodded and opened the folder I slid to her. "This is it," I said. "We file everything." She reviewed the materials in silence. "You're not doing this just for yourself, are you?" she asked softly. "No," I replied. "I'm doing it for the next daughter who gets told she's ungrateful for surviving." We submitted the complaint that afternoon. The charges were straightforward: identity fraud, unauthorized use of medical imagery, emotional harassment. Attached were the audio file, financial records, and a detailed timeline with over 50 pages of supporting documents. Within 3 days, we got confirmation. The filing was accepted. A formal court date would be scheduled. I didn't post about it. Didn't tell anyone outside of Blair and Rowan. Instead, I watched the fallout unfold on its own. Zinnia wiped her Instagram of every family photo within 24 hours of the podcast airing. Seraphine sent me a direct message that read, "Mom didn't mean it like that. Please don't take this public." Too late. Valora tried to apply pressure through her charity's board. Rumors circulated that she made phone calls, told them I was mentally unstable, tried to convince them not to believe the story. It backfired. Someone from the board leaked the podcast episode to a local paper. Within 2 days, the headline read, "Mother exploits daughter's illness for public sympathy and profit." Donations to her nonprofit dried up almost overnight, but I didn't celebrate. I kept working, kept cataloging. And on a rainy Thursday evening, I walked alone through the city, headphones in, listening to my own voice tell my story. It was strange, hearing myself that way. Calm, steady, controlled. "When they erased me," I said in the recording, "I didn't vanish. I reorganized." I stopped walking and stood at a crosswalk near a florist, watching couples shuffle by with groceries and umbrellas. "They built a legacy of silence," I whispered. "I built a case of truth." As I crossed the street, my phone buzzed. One notification. "Valora Whitman has been served." The folded note was still in my hand when I stepped onto the courthouse steps. I hadn't intended to bring it. It was something I wrote in the middle of the night, barely thinking, just scribbling like I used to when I was a teenager and didn't feel heard. But here it was, soft from the pressure of my fingers, creased where my thumb kept folding and unfolding it. I'd tucked it into my coat pocket, just in case I needed a reminder of who I was and what this moment meant. Blair met me at the entrance, files in one hand, phone in the other. She glanced up and gave a short nod. She looked like the kind of woman who carried truth like a blade. I hoped some of that had rubbed off on me by now. Inside, the courthouse was already buzzing. A few reporters lingered near the hallway, one holding up a phone as I passed. I kept my head straight. My name was out there now, not because I wanted it to be, but because staying invisible was never a choice. They'd made that decision for me a long time ago. When we entered the courtroom, I saw them sitting together, Seraphine and Zinnia, matching pastel suits, tight smiles. Seraphine glanced my way, then looked down at her tablet. Zinnia offered a quick, rehearsed smile that didn't reach her eyes. Dorian wasn't there. No surprise. He never showed up when accountability was on the table. Valora came in last, sunglasses still on, even though the room was lit by cheap overhead fluorescents. Her lawyer walked beside her, a man in his 60s who looked like he'd rather be golfing. She sat without acknowledging anyone. Blair leaned in. "Remember, they taught you silence. You're teaching them consequence." I nodded. My throat felt tight, but not from nerves. It was the pressure of something finally giving way. Like a dam breaking, not with a roar, but with quiet, steady certainty. The judge entered. Everyone stood. The case number was read. My name echoed through the courtroom in a way it never had at home. And then Blair stood and began. She was surgical, precise. She walked the court through every document, Financial records, screenshots, donor receipts from the fake GoFundMe, timestamps from manipulated images. Then came the audio. She pressed play, and Valora's voice filled the courtroom. If she had died, it would have saved us all trouble. No lawsuits, no shame. The silence afterward wasn't awkward, it was weighted. Seraphine shifted in her seat. Zinnia blinked rapidly, her perfectly applied mascara suddenly less composed. Valora didn't move, not a blink, not a twitch. Just that practiced stillness of someone who believed they could outlast the truth. But the truth wasn't waiting anymore. It was standing, in heels. With backup. The judge didn't need long. After reviewing the exhibits, he looked toward the bench with measured calm. "Miss Whitman," he said, addressing Valora, "this court finds sufficient cause for civil misconduct, including identity fraud and defamation of character through digital exploitation." Valora's attorney started to object, but the judge raised a hand. "You had your chance. You failed to respond to discovery requests. That tells me more than your objection." Then came the motions. Blair filed for an emergency freeze on all family assets. The house. The accounts tied to Valora's name. Even the property in Arizona I hadn't known about until 3 days ago. She also filed a motion to reverse property transfers, including the house I'd helped fund years ago. She moved for immediate removal of Valora from her position on the charity board, citing ethical violation. The judge approved every motion, one gavel strike, just one. That sound was louder than every scream I'd ever swallowed. When it was over, the judge turned to Valora. "You are hereby ordered to issue both written and verbal public apologies, which will be recorded, transcribed, and archived. You may proceed." Valora stood. Her lawyer handed her a sheet of paper. She didn't unfold it for a moment. She just stared at the judge. Then, with the mechanical grace of someone reading an unfamiliar language, she began. "I misrepresented my daughter. I used her image without consent. I damaged her reputation. I accept full responsibility." No pause, no hesitation, just recitation. Her voice was even. Her hands didn't shake. And yet, the room changed. No one clapped. No one gasped. But the air itself felt different. Denser. I didn't smile. I didn't nod in victory. I simply breathed. The judge offered a final word of caution, reminded all parties of their responsibilities moving forward, then dismissed us. Outside the courthouse, the reporters were waiting. Flashbulbs, microphones, too many questions. One asked, "Will you be reconciling with your mother?" I stopped walking. "Reconciliation isn't a reunion," I said. "It's accountability." No further comment. That night, after the flight back to Portland, I found myself walking one more time through Bozeman, virtually. I opened the real estate site and searched the address. The house was now listed as pending litigation. I opened the old photo of the front porch, the chipped paint, the worn wreath, the mat that never got cleaned. Then I took out the note I'd written days earlier, the one I had folded and carried to court. "You had my silence. Now I have the rest." I drove back to that house one last time, parked quietly, walked up the porch like I had so many times before. But this time, I didn't knock. I didn't ask to come in. I slipped the note under the door, stood there for a moment, and walked away. I didn't look back. The front door clicked shut behind me with a soft finality. I stood on the porch a second longer than I needed to, listening. Not for footsteps or voices, but for the echo of something I wasn't sure I believed in yet. Peace. It didn't roar in. It didn't parade. It simply arrived. Quiet, like dusk settling over familiar pavement. Back in Portland, spring had begun creeping up the edges of my life. Morning light stretched longer now, and I'd found myself opening the windows more often, not because the air was warm, but because I was learning how to breathe differently. Cooper, my golden retriever, greeted me with his usual tail-thumping enthusiasm when I walked into the house that afternoon. He carried one of his plush toys in his mouth, as if to remind me we didn't have to carry the heavy stuff all the time. From the living room, I heard the soft hum of a cartoon. In the center of the rug sat Hope, barefoot, legs crossed, a trail of crayons spilling across paper. She looked up, the corners of her lips curving into a smile that always caught me off guard. "You're back," she said. I nodded. "I told you I'd be home before dinner." She held up her drawing. "This one's us. 3 stick figures. One tall, one medium-sized with ears, Cooper, obviously, and one with a sun over her head." "Why am I glowing?" I asked, crouching beside her. She shrugged. "Because you fixed stuff." I didn't know what to say to that, so I kissed the top of her head and let the moment linger. Later that evening, after Hope went to bed, I stood in the doorway of what had become my office. The shelves were mostly filled now. Books I loved, some I wrote in, a few small framed photos. One was of Hope, with a chocolate-smeared grin. Another was me and Cooper at the coast. The third was blank. A place left open, not for family, not for what was lost, but for something I'd build on my terms. 3 months had passed since the court ruling. 3 months since Valora had read her public apology like it was a grocery list. 3 months since the headlines faded, the social media buzz died down, and everyone else moved on. But I hadn't. Not in the way they assumed. I didn't stew. I didn't seek revenge. I repurposed. The transfer of property was finalized just a few weeks after the court decision. The Bozeman house, my childhood home, the place that held more shadows than memories, was now mine. But I didn't claim it for nostalgia. I claimed it for purpose. The Solace House. That's what I called it. It wasn't flashy. No ribbon-cutting ceremony. No press coverage. Just a new sign out front, fresh paint over the door, and a mission clear as glass. For daughters erased before they could speak. We installed bunk beds in my old bedroom. Donated dressers filled the other rooms. Volunteers helped convert the basement into a counseling space. There was a reading nook, a community kitchen. The first week, we welcomed 3 women. The second week, 5. Every time I walked through those halls, I remembered what it felt like to be silent in your own home. I never wanted another woman to feel that way again. One quiet Thursday, I returned home from the shelter to find a small package on my doorstep. The handwriting on the envelope was instantly familiar. Aunt Thora. Inside, a single piece of stationery. The same powder blue she always used. Her cursive, steady as always. Luneth. Forgiveness is not approval. It's permission. To live without their weight. You've earned every breath you take now. Every one of them. You don't owe anyone a version of yourself that bleeds just to make them feel clean. Live well. That's the only apology they'll never know how to give. Love, Thora. I sat with that letter for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. Some things deserve quiet. Not silence, but stillness. I folded the letter and placed it in my desk drawer beside the adoption paperwork I was still waiting to finalize. Hope's caseworker had already noted the progress. We were a stable household. Words I never thought would apply to anything with my name on it. That night, after Hope was tucked in and Cooper had curled himself at the foot of the couch, I opened my laptop. There, staring back at me, was the folder labeled Phase 2, Counteraction. I hovered over it, and then, slowly, I clicked delete. It didn't feel like loss. It felt like release. In its place, I created a new folder, Hope's Adventures. The first file I saved was a scan of her drawing from that morning, the one where I was glowing. The second was a photo I took later that week, Hope and Cooper running through the wildflowers behind the shelter, wind in their hair, sun on their faces, no legacy of pain trailing behind them, just joy, present and honest. Later, I opened my journal, an old habit I'd picked back up, and wrote a single line. I didn't die, but I did disappear, and then I chose to be found. As I closed the book, the voice that once haunted me whispered from some dusty corner of memory, "Maybe dying will make you interesting." I smiled. Interesting isn't what they remember, it's who you become when they forget you. Sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought in courtrooms or through arguments. They're fought in silence, in walking away, and in choosing to heal instead of retaliate. This story wasn't about revenge, it was about reclaiming worth, even when your own family tries to bury it. What would you do if someone you trusted tried to erase you? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe if you want more true stories like this, where survival isn't the end, it's just the beginning.